they thought he didn't belong. Just another face in a world that refused to see him as equal. One ordinary day, a simple walk, a routine visit, or a quiet evening turned into a nightmare no one could have predicted. Doors slammed shut, whispers turned to threats, and the law that promised protection felt like a distant dream. In that moment, his reality shattered, not because of what he did but because of who he was. Every glance, every word, every judgment stacked against him in ways he couldn't fight alone. What would you do if the world you trusted suddenly turned against you? But this isn't just one man's story, it's a window into a system designed to divide and silence. What happens next will expose truths many want to ignore. It was a quiet morning, and Marcus had just dropped his kids off at school. His life was simple but full. He ran a small local business, coached the little league team, and spent evenings cooking dinner with his family. The kind of life most people would call ordinary, peaceful, safe. But safety is an illusion. That very afternoon, a casual trip to the grocery store became a test of his very existence. Stares lingered longer than necessary, voices whispered just a little too loud, and doors that should have been open felt closed. Every routine interaction suddenly carried a weight he hadn't felt before, a subtle yet unmistakable hostility that made him question what he had always taken for granted. What no one realized was that these were the first cracks in a storm that was about to engulf him completely. He thought it was just another bad day, but what happened next would shatter everything he knew about fairness and justice. Marcus stepped into the grocery store expecting the usual nods and casual greetings. But the atmosphere felt different. Eyes followed him, lingering too long. A cashier hesitated as he placed his items on the conveyor belt, her smile tight and forced. Behind him, a group of shoppers murmured, glancing over their shoulders, their laughter cutting a little too close. Every glance felt like a question he couldn't answer, every whisper a judgment he hadn't asked for. It started small. Comments under his breath as he walked past, doors shutting just a second too early, a manager who avoided his gaze entirely. Then came the direct confrontation. Two men at the parking lot blocked his car, asking questions about where he lived, what he did, who he associated with. Their tone was polite, almost casual, but Marcus felt the tension twist in his chest. Politeness can hide 100 intentions, some deadly. At work it wasn't any better. Orders were delayed inexplicably, emails went unanswered, and suppliers began questioning deals that had always gone smoothly. Whispers of suspicion followed him down hallways. One client even refused to shake his hand, muttering something about company standards, while his eyes betrayed a different story. Marcus tried to brush it off. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe he was imagining the hostility. But the subtle escalations were relentless. One evening, while coaching his team, a parent complained loudly about his attitude toward certain players. The accusation had no basis in reality, but it spread like wildfire, carried from one conversation to the next, until Marcus was painted as someone dangerous, someone untrustworthy. Then came the threat he couldn't ignore. A note slipped under his front door and signed but clear, "Stay out of places you don't belong. Watch yourself." His pulse raced, a mixture of fear and anger heating his veins. For the first time, Marcus realized this wasn't about misunderstandings or mistakes. This was targeted. This was about who he was, not what he did. As days passed, the tension grew unbearable. Marcus noticed surveillance cameras angled at his home and car, vehicles following him without disguise, emails flagged, social media profiles monitored. Even friends hesitated to meet him in public, their fears silent but palpable. Every step outside his front door felt like walking through a gauntlet, every casual encounter a test of patience and resolve. Yet Marcus refused to retreat. Each act of discrimination only fueled his determination. He started documenting everything: dates, times, faces, conversations. A diary of injustices, meticulously detailed, a record for when the truth could no longer be ignored. But the breaking point came at the community board meeting. What began as a routine discussion erupted into chaos. Voices shouted over each other, accusations flew, and Marcus found himself at the center of a storm he hadn't invited. Neighbors he'd trusted turned away, siding silently with the powers orchestrating the harassment. The tension was so thick it felt like it could be cut with a knife. Every eye in the room seemed to weigh him, measure him, judge him. And then it happened, the moment that would change everything. A council member, emboldened by the whispers and the prejudice, publicly questioned his right to live in the neighborhood. The words hit like a physical blow. Marcus's life, his home, his community, all called into question in front of everyone he knew. At that instant, he realized the fight wasn't just about him anymore. It was about standing up against something far larger, something that had been allowed to fester in plain sight for too long. The question was no longer whether he could endure, it was whether he could fight back, and if he did, at what cost. He left that meeting with a resolve burning hotter than fear, a plan forming in his mind. But the path ahead was dangerous, unpredictable, and fraught with consequences that no amount of preparation could fully account for. What Marcus would do next would shock the community, and change his life forever. Marcus stepped into the town hall, heart hammering, palms slick. The room was packed. Neighbors, officials, even a few reporters, all waiting, watching. The tension was a living thing, pressing against his chest, each stare like a needle. As he approached the podium, murmurs rose and fell, sharp whispers of doubt and prejudice slicing through the air. He cleared his throat, but before he could speak, a voice cut through the room. "Why are you even here? You don't belong." It was loud, deliberate, meant to humiliate. Heads turned. Some sneered, others avoided his gaze. The accusation wasn't new, but hearing it spoken so boldly in front of everyone, sent a wave of anger and fear crashing through him. Another person joined in, citing community concerns, implying he was a threat. Laughter erupted in corners, short and cruel, while whispers spread like wildfire. Marcus felt the weight of every single eye on him, measuring, judging, condemning him for being who he was. His chest tightened. Every memory of harassment, every silent attack, every whispered threat replayed in his mind like a relentless drumbeat. Then came the moment that stopped him cold. One official slammed the gavel, calling him unfit to live in the neighborhood. The word hung in the air, heavy, almost tangible. Marcus froze. His mind raced. Was this what it all led to? Years of subtle and overt racism, all culminating in this single, undeniable declaration of exclusion? But something shifted inside him. The fear that had gripped him for so long, the weight of silence and avoidance, turned into a burning determination. He straightened, lifted his voice, and began to speak, not quietly, not politely, but with every ounce of truth and courage he had. He recounted the harassment, the threats, the injustice that had haunted him. He named the fear, the lies, and the prejudice, exposing the reality no one had wanted to see. The room went silent. Hearts raced. Some faces hardened, some softened, but no one could ignore him. In that instant, Marcus realized this was bigger than any one person, bigger than himself. This was about confronting the injustice that had lingered too long. And as he paused, letting his words sink in, the crowd held its breath, waiting for what would happen next. Would they acknowledge the truth, or would he be forced to fight even harder for his right to exist in this space? Marcus left the town hall that evening, shoulders heavy but unbroken. The whispers and stares hadn't vanished, and some faces remained cold, but something inside him had shifted. He had spoken his truth, faced the fear, and refused to be silenced. That night, he realized courage wasn't the absence of fear, it was acting despite it. The incident didn't erase the prejudice he had endured for years, but it exposed it. It sparked conversations that had long been ignored, forcing the community to confront its biases. For Marcus, the fight wasn't just personal anymore, it was a fight for recognition, for dignity, for change. Every glance that lingered longer than necessary, every dismissive comment, now had a face and a voice demanding justice. Outside, the world didn't always feel fair, and racism didn't vanish overnight. But in that small, tense room, something shifted. One story, one voice, had pierced the walls of denial and discomfort. It reminded him, and all who witnessed it, that silence only allows injustice to continue. Change begins when someone refuses to look away, when someone dares to speak out, even in the face of fear. Marcus' journey didn't end at that town hall. It became a catalyst, not just for his own resilience, but for a larger reckoning, a reminder that confronting racism is uncomfortable, necessary, and urgent. Each step forward, each conversation, each acknowledgement of injustice matters. And as Marcus walked home under the dim streetlights, he carried more than his own story. He carried the collective weight of those silenced for too long. The question lingered, heavy and demanding: how many more voices will it take before the world truly listens? Because this isn't just Marcus' story. It's a story still playing out every day. And if we stay silent, it will continue. Will you let it?